Good morning, happy Friday, excuse me, and Memorial Day. It's a powerful day for me and my family on Memorial Day, and I'll kind of talk about generations of secrets and traumas and pain that can get passed down from generation to generation that does affect our emotional intelligence and our intuition from being able to really shine through, and how in our time right now, which I believe is in a time and a period of awakening to ourselves and to our own emotions and our intuition, which is being supported so much by the outside world, by doctors now, by schools now, by not everywhere, but it's rolling out. It's really becoming a period of awakening. And how do we let some of this old stuff go, really, that maybe has been passed down. So I'm going to share a little bit about my family and the generational trauma that came along with being from a military family and from losing family members in war. My grandmother was a World War II veteran herself. She was a woman in the Army Corps, and she came from very severe poverty, which is a whole different trauma itself, so I'll just focus on the military part. But the U.S. Army basically saved her and her brothers from a life of poverty as adults. And it was right at the time, right before World War II, when her brothers both joined the Army. They were in the Army for a little while before the war even started. And her oldest brother was sadly killed training for the war. He left behind a pregnant wife and 2 other kids, and that was the first set of trauma around the war that happened for my grandmother. Then as the war continued on, her baby brother was part of the 2nd Armored Division, and they were coming in behind the 101st Airborne on D-Day as the second wave of soldiers to come in to begin to take back France from the Nazi army. And he was killed in action taking the town of Carentan in France. And that was, she found out actually through a news article, because she didn't have social media like this. And she never would really talk about it. She never read their letters. She put all their letters in a chocolate box, put it away. And like a lot of people of the silent generation, that's what they're called, is after the war, they just didn't talk about what happened. They got back here to life. They started having babies. A lot of stuff came to them that made life very convenient and easy, but they did not talk about what happened. My grandfather was also a 20-year Army sergeant. He fought many battles in World War II. He came back from the war and never talked about what happened with anybody. And there was this belief of that generation, especially in my family, that that talking to someone about your emotions was a sign of weakness. And so in a sense, everybody got kind of frozen. Not everyone, because I think eventually people started talking about it, but got frozen in this period of time. And it really caused us to have a big disconnect within ourselves and our intuition. When my grandmother turned 90, I had this very powerful, I was really working on clearing away anything that was blocking me from intuition. I was doing something called the Artist's Way, which I highly recommend. I was writing songs, and I got this very strong impulse to sit down and go through her whole life story. And I wasn't sure she would. We were very, very close. And she did. She sat down and we went through her whole story. She let me read all the letters of her brothers, and we really just unlocked so much of her past. And I didn't know that carried on to me, that the pain and the trauma carried on to me growing up as well, and my mom and her sisters, because no one could ever talk about it. It was like these people didn't really even hardly exist in our family. She always went to the Veterans Day parades and Memorial Day parades and stood up for her brothers, but there was no release of that. And so we did that before she passed away. It was really beautiful. We were able to find out all about her brother Johnny's story with a World War II veteran here in San Diego that helped me research it. And I just dove into a lot of emotion and generational trauma. And a lot of people in my family were like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? We don't want to, this was the past. And I'd hear all this stuff going on from my family. Not everyone, but it took them a while to get comfortable with that I was going to start talking about something that had gone on so long ago and caused our family so much pain to have lost somebody at war. I think people don't realize that when someone is lost at war, it does not just end that generation. It can go forward quite a while in the generations until those people are honored and until that family does recognize that that is part of our emotional makeup. And so it's kind of like a feeling of unfreezing our emotions. And I bring this up because I know that we're in this movement of awakening, that if you have old stuff, and my family turned a lot to drugs and alcohol. That was a solution to numb out those painful feelings. So if we're trying to move towards emotional intelligence and hearing our intuition, it's really, really hard to do that if you don't know how, you're not supported. And so now we're in this period of time where it is supported to look at ourselves. And it actually is not supported anymore to just, drown ourselves in alcohol, or an opioid addiction epidemic is happening right now. And a lot of that has to do with our being lacking emotional intelligence and our intuition. And I really do believe that as we move into being more emotionally intelligent, we will see less and less of addictions like that. Now it could be opioids, it could be food, it could be all kinds of things that people are using to stuff because they don't know how to get in touch with themselves and their own self-awareness. So one of the things I did, and I'll post the song that I wrote for my great uncle, but what works for me a lot is music, art, dance. And so I am writing a play for my grandmother's story, because there's the other side of letting people hear what has happened. That part, when somebody hears what's happened, it releases so much. And so I've been working on that, and I worked on, his song was the first one I worked on. I didn't know I was going to write a play, but that's what's ending up happening. And so I'll post his song. It's on SoundCloud. It's not produced. It's just a raw song that I did on the guitar. But that's been a process to release that, so I can hear my own intuition to tell me what the next step is to do in my life, so I don't have to carry around that. I can be emotionally intelligent, I can speak clearly, I can speak honestly, I can connect with people, all those things that allow me to be in my day now, allow me to have joy now, allow me to stop what's going on and be able to check in and not be terrified. I've watched people, I worked in a treatment center for when I was 21 for a couple of years, where kids were coming in and the families were just terrified to look at themselves. So it was easy to scapegoat somebody, put all of that focus on someone else, and that just makes everybody sick. We're coming out of that, guys. I really believe that. I'm seeing it everywhere right now. La Jolla Light just printed in our newspaper here that our schools, Muirlands and La Jolla High, are moving towards a social and emotional learning program to teach our youngsters how to do what I'm talking about, how to check in with themselves, how to know who they are. So if you're watching this, and some of us have already done a lot of work on this. I see some of you there, Lori, Patty, hi. I know we've all done a lot of work. There's always more to do, and I'm so glad you're watching. Happy Memorial Day. Please stop and think of all the soldiers we have lost in war. That's what this day is for. And please think of my great uncle, Johnny, Sergeant Johnny, my great uncle Ray, who both lost their lives during World War II. And happy Memorial Day, and I will be back on Friday.